Public. Okay, Dave Vellante. We're knocking it out of the park here with some hot take VMworld coverage. Let me just go check out the channel here. We're going to get the video going on here with you. Okay, we're good. I'm going to get the YouTube video. We're going to embed it on the crowd chat for maximum conversation. All right, so first, Dave, while I'm doing that, just explain the transaction. Michael Dell, Dell Technologies, is contemplating or announced a spin out. What's the hot take? First, describe the news.
Yeah, so on June 23rd, as everybody knows, the Wall Street Journal reported Dell was exploring strategic options for its 81% ownership in VMware. Well, today, just hit the wire, Dell announced that it had filed a 13D with the SEC, did a press release, and filed an 8K that it's exploring options to spin off its 81% ownership. And the way they're looking at doing that is a special dividend that VMware would pay shareholders, and of course Dell is the largest shareholder, so they would get 81% of it. So what does this mean? This does a couple of things. One is it signals to the street that Dell is giving VMware its freedom, but the cost is high. The cost of freedom is high, John, with really two main pieces. One is it's got to pay that special dividend, which is worth approximately at VMware's current value, I'm guessing around $47 billion. Now remember, Dell paid $67 billion for EMC. So it's essentially getting EMC for free. Plus, remember, it spun out Pivotal, it spun out RSA, et cetera. So it's delevered a number of things, and it's been paying down its debt with VMware cash. The second component of that is they are going to negotiate a commercial agreement with VMware as it pertains to sales and marketing, go-to-market, R&D, intellectual property rights, and so they're going to secure a special relationship with VMware. So the net effect of this is going to be, it's going to unlock value for both companies. It's going to remove the liquidity overhang from Dell stock. Remember, the core Dell is worth negative, whatever, 15, 20, 25 billion, whatever that number is. It's going to unlock value for VMware, as we've seen when this news leaked. Both stocks went up, and it's going to help Dell pay down its debt. Its objective is to get to investment grade for both companies, because VMware is going to have to take on some debt and have an annuity to pay Dell for some period of time until it can pay off that $47 billion. It doesn't have that much on its balance sheet. The downside for Dell is that it's not going to have the benefit of VMware on its income statement anymore, which is going to shrink the company down from 90 to about 70 billion, and it's going to lose its highest margin, highest growth revenue in VMware, and settle down as a company that is essentially servers, storage, networking, and PCs.
I mean, to me, what I find fascinating is just the financial transaction. Dave, you and I, this is our 11th season, 10-year anniversary this past May, completed 10 years on our 11th year of CUBE coverage. We've seen the ups and downs of Dell, and we also our first ever CUBE event was EMC World. Since
right.
Michael Dell acquired EMC, which was a blockbuster, the biggest acquisition, really was putting a target on HPE or HP at the time, and essentially the enterprise data center. Cloud came along, and at that time, Amazon just went on a tear, changed the game. Michael then took the company from public to private. And then while private, behind the curtain, he said, I don't want the 90-day shot clock, essentially earnings pressure, buys EMC, then takes them public again, has all this debt. It seems very complicated. And then now he's shedding VMware for many, many reasons. I'm sure there's speculation we're going to go through, but it's kind of complicated. So can you simplify the transaction? What actually happened and what is happening now?
So as you well know, you've been watching VMware since its early days when Diane Green and her husband started the company. And so what's happening is when EMC bought VMware for the steal of the century, $650 million for for a company that's worth, nearly 70 billion now. Diane realized, wow, we sold way too early. And VMware, as you well know, never was happy under the guidance and governance of EMC. It wanted its freedom. And it never got that under Dell. And Dell basically owns 81% of VMware. So basically what VMware is saying and its ecosystem is saying is, hey, and the investors, set us free. And Dell's saying, okay, I'll set you free, and it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you $47 billion. You're going to have to take on some debt and pay me an annuity over time, number one. And number two, I want a lock spec around integration and IP, and we're going to have a special relationship, and that's the cost of your freedom. So VMware becomes an independent company that has a VIG to pay, and Dell is going to, cash out and liquidate its VMware ownership.
We have an attendee in the Zoom room. If you want to chime in, let us know into the chat. We're also streaming it to YouTube. We're streaming it to CrowdChat as well. If we had time, we'd have a full-on digital event on the Cube 365, our new event software. Keep an eye on that. But if you want to chat, just put a little note there. We'll make you talk. We'll bring people in. We put the word out on Twitter. But Dave, this is kind of an ad hoc hot take. My hot take is, Pat Gelsinger, remember just a few years ago, it might have even been two, I can't remember why my brain is fried with this COVID-19 situation, but remember, he was on the firing block. I mean, it was speculated that he had a ton of pressure, and, he had his formula, and we've had conversations with him. I mean, going back to when he first came on as CEO from president of EMC. Pat Gelsinger is a techie. He's got his own style. You either love him or you hate him. That's kind of the world. You get what you get with Pat, but he's super smart, makes great bets. He made a bet. And then there was that moment, that VMworld, where he was like, he put the speech out there, and he's like, this is what we're doing. Pat's a hard charger. Then you got Michael Dell, the magician, entrepreneur, rebooted, reimagined, took the company private, got his entrepreneurial mojo going there. He's like, screw Wall Street. I'm going to put together a modern conglomerate, which he did, took it public. He's making money. VMware's still the crown jewel, and that's changed. Their deal with Amazon has created massive clarity and success. What do you make of all that? Like, a lot of dynamics going on there. I mean, to me, it's like, Gelsinger's got a few more years, and he's not done yet. I think he's got an eye on the prize somewhere.
Well, remember, we laid out 5 specific scenarios that these guys could go through. And one of them was, of course, spinning off VMware, which was sort of the original leak. Some people thought they were going to spin in VMware, which, this is a financial transaction, right? I mean, I got to believe that Michael Dell and his investor, Silver Lake, and they had a couple of other investors as well, wanted to have, some kind of exit, wanted to liquidate, at least, get some kind of return on their massive efforts here. Although, remember, they only put in $4 billion of their own cash. But the market's hot, despite COVID. And look, if Michael Dell is selling, he's selling hot. Right?
So what is the value? What is the value of VMware right now?
Yeah, so it's around 70 billion. Let me just pull it up on today's close. I don't know if this story leaked. So VMware is, 60 billion. I said 70, but it's about 58.5 billion. So that puts Dell's, 81% somewhere in the high 40s, right? 59.
And what's Dell Technologies valued at?
Yeah, so Dell, remember, Dell has a negative value in all this. Let me just do a quick look up here. It was like minus 23 when I did my analysis at the core. Dell's at 39 billion. So it's kind of closed that gap a little bit when it leaked, the announcement here. So 39, and its VMware ownership is worth 47. Wow, they really closed a lot of that gap. So its core Dell is now worth 8 billion, right?
We got a question. We got a question from one of our.
-8 billion. Sorry.
We got a question from one of our attendees, Tommy Morallo. Hey, John and Dave, is there a scenario where a major cloud player, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, purchase VMware?
Yeah, that was one of my scenarios. Actually, I didn't think it was likely, but a strategic company buying VMware or some private equity firm. I think the obvious company there would be Google. So great question. But that's a big pill to swallow.
I mean,
big
you
pill
got
to swallow.
Amazon. You got Amazon. The Amazon deal is much deeper integration. Amazon could take that off the table and have an enterprise sales force and have an operator role, and certainly got Outpost. I mean, Amazon.
Yeah, but why does Amazon need VMware? I mean, Amazon's crushing it, without VMware, and they're going to get VMware anyway eventually. Because VMware's running VMware Cloud on AWS. They spin up a bare metal instance, and then the customers are going to say, "Well, that's nice, bare metal, but I want all these cloud services." So eventually, I think
you could argue that they don't want. They could take them off the table, so Google doesn't get them. Look, if Google bought VMware,
wow,
it solves
it
solves Google's problem. Look, Google has a huge problem. The reason why they're not winning is because their cloud is not understood. They're having what was called in business school diseconomies of scale. And Andy Jassy kind of floats that out there in his talk of, there's no compression algorithm for experience. That's Andy Jassy. What he's really targeting with that comment is Google. Google has failed, and they're failing to win the enterprise. And that has been their Achilles heel. And they've been hiring a lot of people, but it just takes time to ramp up. You can't just be enterprise overnight, especially when you have an organization that's built for large scale and SRE process. So enterprise is a messy business. You know that. Enterprise sales, it's hard. Yeah. So, welcome to the party, Google. So I can solve that right away. Cloudera is out there. You got VMware. These are companies that have sales forces. And I like Cloudera because they're all technical and they're available to buy for a couple billion. VMware, you're in the enterprise. You're in the data center. Boom. I love Google. I love Google buying VMware.
Yeah, but you're talking about a $60 billion investment. I mean, that's a big nut to swallow. Well, look, actually, you think about it, Michael Dell, he paid less for EMC, so.
Google's printing money.
Yeah, Google could do it. But let me ask you a question. Would Amazon take out VMware in a defensive move because they don't want Google to get them? Or would Amazon just say, you know what, Google, go ahead, and we'll just, bomb pricing?
I think we're pontificating and we're prognosticating there. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think Andy Jassy and the Amazon team sit up there worrying about whether to make a move of taking them off the table as a hedge. I think if I was Amazon, you got the lead. The whole mentality is keep the competition in the rearview mirror and extend the lead as fast as possible. So, to me, what's the trade-off? What are they? To your point, what is VMware bringing to the table for AWS? And remember, Sanjay Poon has been doing deals with Google and Microsoft.
So let's think radically for a minute here, though. Having said that, at first I'm sort of negative on it, but you see Jeff Bezos, he's buying into grocery. There was a lot of rumors about him buying retail physical space. There was rumors about him buying, theaters. So they do. Amazon's mentality is to bring those two worlds together. So you know AWS better than I do. You never say never with AWS. So it's an interesting scenario, but that wasn't my top one. I was kind of favoring Dell hanging on to VMware for a while, maybe monetizing some of its ownership share. I do worry about Dell's income statement. I mean, Dell just becomes a much less interesting company, in my view anyway, without VMware on its income statement. I mean, VMware is a jewel. High growth, throws off a lot of cash, high margin business. Take that away. Why do CIOs want to talk to Dell now? Because they got good relationships, fine. They do make great infrastructure, but are they as strategic without VMware as they are with VMware? I would say no, despite their commercial agreement.
Well, their portfolio has been streamlined a bit. They're cloud native. They got agility. So if you have a product portfolio that can just slide in with where VMware and cloud native and multi-cloud's going, then they do have a story. And it's a story better than the competition, which is what? Fragmented set of smaller players, VHPE, Arista, who else is out there? NetApp, storage, pure storage. So you get specialism versus kind of broad-based.
Yeah, all the commodities. And you're right. If I'm in that business, I'd much rather be Dell with a stronger supply chain and they can make money and have great cash flow with that broader portfolio, and they can do very, very well in a lower margin business, better than most. I think you pointed out when HP split, had given up their supply chain in PCs. You gave the story of the printer days and how much leverage they got out of that distribution channel. And, HP gave that up we know the story there. And so Dell is the lone company there in a position to compete, with the big players, whether it's Huawei or even the big cloud players. So, that's a good point there. But I'm much more interested in Dell with VMware than without. I just think it's a much more interesting play. Again, it's going to come down, John, to the negotiated commercial arrangement. What that is, if they have IP rights, that are really, if they can keep their claws in VMware and they have this annuity for some N number of years, that's attractive if they have a more special relationship. And I guess the partner ecosystem is saying, all right, well, I guess, we were already down the path of trying to find alternatives to VMware anyway, whether it's IBM, NetApp, they all talk the right talk, Cisco, but they're looking for alternatives and driving into their cloud strategies.
Well, the question is who's going to be the interoperability layer between multiple clouds? And I think the battles between Cisco and VMware. And I think if I'm inside, again, I have no data, I'm just making up stuff at this point. But if I was a fly on the wall inside VMware, I would be like, you know what, we gotta unwind from Dell. If we want to compete in that battle against Cisco and be the number one or number two player, because right now they're not number one, Cisco's number one. If they want to be the virtual networker in this new horizontal multi-edge, core to edge stack, we have autonomous like systems, as Oracle calls them, or self-driving, as Pat Gelsinger calls it. You can't have a package-based solution. You need a platform, right? You got to have a platform, and that platform's got to be intelligent. And that's what VMware's building. You look at the cloud native work that they're doing, they're building all the connective tissue or middleware, for lack of a better description, to connect the clouds, because no one in their right mind, if I'm an enterprise, is going to try to fork their development teams to be peaked on multiple clouds, and that's been a big inhibitor. And if the market goes developer-led, of which Jerry Chen and I just talked on theCUBE yesterday, if you're developer-led, that means every single enterprise is going to come out of COVID saying, we got to build apps. We've got some event software. No one wants to buy and put their business in the hands of a vendor. They're going to start customizing the workloads because they can. For the first time in modern history, an enterprise can actually codify all the workloads or apps for every customer-facing or core value chain of their business without having to buy some monolithic system. So right. That's amazing. So that means they're going to be hiring a shitload of developers. So if that's the case, you got to make a bet on the cloud. That's why Amazon's winning, and that's why Microsoft's winning and Google's losing, because Microsoft rolled their installed base up. Amazon just won as a market leader, and Microsoft's holding the line, acting like they have as relevant stuff as Amazon. They don't, but they have the huge installed base that says, hey, don't go anywhere else. We got you, which is a great tactic. And that, Satya Nadella and team are holding the line while they build out tier one services. You saw it with Jedi, you're seeing it everywhere. And that is a great business plan for Microsoft. That's not leading innovation, right? So, but it's developer led and it supports the enterprise. So now I got 3 clouds to look at. What do I do? That's the number one challenge. So VMware could be that single pane of glass.
Absolutely. So can I share some data with you?
Sure.
Let me pull this up. So this is from the breaking analysis that I did, which I was favoring, some kind of, continued closer relationship between Dell and VMware, kind of operating more as one company, or in their current configuration, but with less Dell ownership. But this is DTR data. It shows the momentum here, the net score, spending momentum from the survey data, and market share, which is presence in the data set. And you can see here, here's Dell, EMC alone, and here's VMware alone. VMware and Cisco, they got big presence in the market. They got decent spending momentum. I didn't put Microsoft on the chart because they're so huge, it would just squish everybody else to the left. But look where AWS is. Everybody wants to be AWS. But I put this red line around Dell VMware. They're in a really attractive space. Pulls Dell up and to the right. Yeah, it pulls VMware to the left. But now, to your point about multi-cloud, VMware's in there, Cisco's in there. I would put Google in there. Google's going to be somewhere, in here. AWS eventually is going to hop in. Microsoft most definitely in there. And then IBM and Red Hat. So you got IBM here and Red Hat here. If I combine IBM and Red Hat, they're kind of right in here where, you know, Dell and VMware are. And so I got to give now IBM and Red Hat, you know, put them right there with VMware. Now, having said all that, VMware now is more free to go out into the ecosystem, and it's got more developer chops potentially, you know, with Pivotal. But you know what? Dell doesn't have the developer chops, so they're just not in that game anymore, in my view, other than as an infrastructure player. Now, maybe Michael Dell's very comfortable with that. But that's why I say, John, I think to me, this is largely a financial transaction where they're saying, hey, we can monetize our VMware ownership. Now's the time. Sell high.
Okay, we got another question from Tommy. He's like our wingman here. What are your thoughts on the expanded buyback authorization, the $1 billion? Is this planning for the potential spinoff? I think he's referring to the stock buyback by, is it Dell Technologies or?
No, no, Dell can.
The VMware shares buyback.
Yeah, I think, I would say, well, this is what's going to be interesting. So the stated objective in the 13D and in the press release was they want to have investment grade for both companies. Remember, Dell today, their stock, they're not investment grade because all the debt they're carrying. VMware is like great investment grade. So what they're going to do is they're going to try to find an equilibrium between the two companies. And I would suspect, to answer the question, that I would think VMware has to be very cautious about how it's using its cash because it's got to pay the piper for its freedom. So it's going to be limited in how much of that cash.
Explain the freedom as a price. What do you mean by that?
Right now, Dell owns 81% of VMware. That means that Dell can call the shots. Dell has, I think it's got 10 or 15 to 1 voting rights. So, you know, Michael Dell completely controls that company. Ultimately, what he says goes. So if he says, "Hey, you're gonna buy Pivotal, and you're gonna pay me more VMware stock and some cash," they have to do it. If he says, "Okay, we're gonna use VMware cash to take DVMT," remember DVMT was the tracking stock, and we're gonna turn that into Dell, and we're gonna go public in a simplified path to going public, and instead of a complicated IPO, which is expensive, and VMware, we're gonna use your cash to do that. And Pat Gelsinger says, "Well, I'd rather use my cash for R&D and acquisition, but here you go." So their freedom eventually, once they, you know, pay off this debt that they're going to have to take on, they'll be able to control their own destiny. So maybe it'll be under Pat, maybe Sanjay becomes the new CEO, but they will be an independent company. That's the freedom that we're talking about here, but they will have that debt overhang. But look at debt right now is cheap. So Michael Dell's saying, look, now's the time to do it, guys. The stocks are inflated. The stock market's going crazy. NASDAQ's at an all-time high. Sell!
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's talk about the what happens to VMware, because VMware, VMworld's coming up. We'll be doing a virtual cube there. This is going to give them the independence. You mentioned the ecosystem. What other moves can they make? You know, we talked to Sanjay Poonen multiple times this past year. They made some acquisitions, some tuck-ins. You're starting to see them fill the gaps on the cloud native side. They got the operator side done with vSphere. They're clearly taking the NSX, they repurposed it in to be the multi-cloud layer. That's the big end game. Obviously, they want to have a developer enablement model. They got to deal with Amazon. Not bad positioning. What do you
Great position.
Well, how should reporters and how should the media who are going to try to grok this story understand this? Because it's a complicated transaction, but at the end of the day, you got an independent company with VMware now, which is the crown jewel of Dell. And you got Dell, which has a negative value because of the crown jewel. So yeah, everyone makes more money. These guys are independent. Dell's valuation goes from negative because you can't have a negative company. They have revenues, they got cash flows.
Right.
More than that, right? So it's a win-win.
Well, so you talk about Pat Gelsinger before, it was under fire. You got to give Gelsinger and his team very high marks. I mean, to me, one of the main jobs of a CEO is TAM expansion. You know, when you've hit escape velocity and you're starting to, slow down your growth a little bit, how do you expand your total available market? And Gelsinger's done a tremendous job of that. I think Pat and his team. The NSX acquisition obviously was huge. Joe Tucci had the handcuffs on VMware all these years, not letting him really get hard into storage. vSAN is knocking it out of the park. And you're in the Valley, and these guys are very sharp acquirers of companies. So They're going hard after security. They got the Pivotal piece. Now, you can say what you want about Pivotal, but at least it's got now some developer chops. It's really going hard after open source. So they've done a great job of expanding their total available market, and they're going after storage, after networking. They've nailed compute. They're going after security. They got the cloud deal that they've cleaned up with AWS. They're going after multi-cloud. So from a market expansion standpoint, and a technology, you've talked many, many years about their great engineering. They're in a pretty good position. The thing that sucks for them is this big cash debt overhang that they're going to have to take on. It's the price of freedom.
So VMware is taking on the debt.
They're going to have to. How else are they going to pay $47 billion to Dell? They're going to have to take on debt. They're going to have to agree to some annuity that they pay out of their free cash flow every year. What can you do with free cash flow? You can buy companies, you can invest in R&D, you can give it to shareholders as a dividend, or you can do stock buybacks, right? Or you can park it in the bank, like Apple does, right? And so VMware's options are going to be constricted because it has to pay Dell $47 billion. Right?
So they're going to be handcuffed because of the transaction, in your opinion.
Well, I mean, they're going to take on some debt, and actually.
Debt kills.
I don't think they're going to take on $47 billion of debt. That would crush them. But look, VMware could easily take on $20 billion of debt, write Dell a check, and then pay it off over n number of years. I don't see that as being problematic. Look at IBM's balance sheet. I think investors are getting a little bit more comfortable with debt, especially with zero interest rates. So I don't think their debt service would be a problem. I think they could easily pay for it out of cash flow. So I would expect it's going to be a combination of, taking more debt. Maybe they'll dilute the stock, after the transaction. That would be a bit of a concern. But I think it's going to be a blend of an annuity that they pay to Dell and take some debt on. They could take more corporate debt on for sure.
All right, what's the bottom line for this deal?
New era. Finally. VMware gets its freedom that it's been after for so many years. I mean, you've always felt the uncomfortable nature of what it was EMC governance, Joe Tucci up there on the stage as, the chairman of the board, Dell having its finger in the VMware pie. And, VMware, I think it's great news for Silicon Valley. I mean, VMware is a Silicon Valley icon, and now it can operate and really innovate with its acquisition, with its great engineering team, with its awesome ecosystem. And so to me, that's the bottom line, is this marks a new era for innovation in multi-cloud, on-prem services, and it sets up a really interesting battle and potential equilibrium between the cloud guys and the on-prem guys. And then the secondary piece of that is the multi-cloud battle, Cisco, Google Anthos, IBM Red Hat, and the whole ecosystem of folks like HashiCorp and others, Rubrik, Cohesity, and the whole Veeam, et cetera, going after that opportunity, which is just jump ball. And then I guess the last thing is, with or Dell, great financial transaction, they have decided that they can go it alone, and the key is going to be this commercial agreement and what that looks like and how much ongoing leverage that gives Dell.
I'm going to try to see if I can get Carl Eschenbach and Jerry Chen or some ex-VMware folks on here. So let's see if Jerry responds. I'm curious to get Carl Eschenbach's perspective. He was president for many years. He's now a venture capitalist, Sequoia Capital, successful VC. He's been successful at VMware. Jerry Chen, again, I just interviewed him yesterday. It'd be great to have him on.
Well, yeah, while you're doing that, I think it's worth reviewing some of the history. Diane Green was always, the story was she was always chirping in Joe Tucci's ear that, hey, man, you guys got the deal of the century. Come on, sweeten the pot here. Let's spin us out. And they wouldn't. They finally agreed, you're gone, bring in Paul Moritz. And they bought his company Pi for, a song, but they put him in charge. He laid out that strategic vision. Remember, he called it a software mainframe until the marketing people got a hold of it. But that's essentially what VMware built: any workload, any app, anywhere.
All right, we got Tommy in here. Tommy, we're bringing you in since you were on the attendee list.
What's going on, guys? How y'all doing?
Hey, thanks for the questions.
Tommy, what's happening?
Well, I
Um,
saw it come on Twitter. I was going through my Twitter feed and I was noticing everyone's accounts being hacked. And then I saw your tweet. So I was like, I'll just join in.
hey, well, thanks for the comments and thanks for jumping in and asking those questions. What's your take on this?
So my take is I don't really know how much I can say because I work at VMware. So I'm just like asking these questions and seeing what you all think. But I just like to get some more and learn what others think about what's going on, have the industry experience and so forth.
We don't want to get you fired now because now that we're streaming this live, so it's technically on YouTube, so it's public. So we don't want to get you fired.
I appreciate
So we
that.
won't put you on the spot there.
Well, John, you remember first year we did VMworld, we had Todd Nielsen on. And Todd Nielsen used to talk about how for every dollar spent on the VMware ecosystem, $15 is spent, or every dollar spent on VMware licenses, $15 is spent on the ecosystem. He's very proud of that. You haven't heard that so much over the years, and you feel like there's a, little tension going on there. So, I mean, as a VMware employee, I'd be stoked. I'd be like, okay, great. Hey, this is freedom. And it's not coming out of my pocket necessarily, although it kind of is if you're a shareholder.
All right, before we let you go, Tommy, anything you want to ask me and Dave while we got you on the screen here?
Yeah, so one more thing I wanted to ask. So potentially taking on all this debt from Dell, what do you take about all the recent acquisitions that VMware has been making?
I think they've been good. I mean, they have to be opportunistic. They're going up against a huge incumbent with Cisco on the enterprise, in my opinion. So, we've been tracking that. Sanjay's been talking about it publicly, but he hasn't been waving the sword. He's been just, co-opetition is what he calls it. But at the end of the day, there's a software layer that's going to come out that's going to have to be programmable around networking. And Cisco is a lock. There's no real multi-vendor in routers and these core infrastructure. So I think, you got to be programmable. And I think, with the cloud game, everything cloud native coming out has to be enabled. So yeah, bring in as much IP as you can. That's a good move. Again, Gelsinger's got a good strategy on tech and architecture. So, his bets tend to pan out most of the time. And when they don't work, he kills it. So the good news is he doesn't harbor around deals. But Sanjay Poonen did tease out the strategy. They do really big deals to set the market as a major kind of pillar, and then tuck unders to facilitate, gaps in the product roadmap or any organic. So I like that strategy. It's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, there's companies that are good at acquisitions, and there's companies that aren't so good at acquisitions. VMware is very good at acquisitions, and there are some real notable. I was talking before about TAM expansion. I mean, AirWatch, right? I mean, you remember John Citrix was mopping up that market. They were killing, EUC, whatever VMware was trying to compete with. AirWatch changed the game. NSX, amazing, right? We'll see if Carbon Black, how that plays out. Some of the forced acquisitions of the misfit toys like Pivotal, I don't hate it, but it gives them developer chops. That's why I don't hate it. I mean, I wasn't necessarily crazy about, Pivotal's position in the marketplace, but at least it gives them a developer play. So, and to have a technical visionary at the top, I think, makes a big difference on somebody who understands architecture and, like you said, knows when it's not working and kills it.
Well, Dave, I think we got and late for you there. It's 4:00 here. You're still in the office, 7:00, summertime. Thank Tommy for coming in and doing a flyby on this impromptu Zoom to YouTube stream. Kind of a cube rapid fire hot take on VMware. I guess I'll end by saying that, it's complicated. We'll see the fallout of this thing. We'll dig into it. I think the reporters and the press are going to have a hard time understanding this. So I think that your breaking analysis, they should look at the reporting that you've done. It's kind of a cheat sheet to kind of tease this out. But ultimately, it's the freedom, it's the release back into the river, catch and release for VMware. So the only issue is, can they continue to innovate with an innovation strategy with the debt? I think it's a good thing. I think Dell has set the table on the product portfolio, and they shouldn't have to hold on to that. And I think that's why they were negatively valued. So I think Dell's going to be a bump up in valuation, and they get a windfall. So I think it's all part of the master plan. So that's my take. Dave?
Well, the street likes it. VMware's up, 2 points after hours. Not surprised. This is kind of what they expected. I mean, look, Dell won't comment, of course. We don't comment on rumors. This was leaked, right? And you saw what happened with the stock. There was a good reaction. They said, hey, this makes sense. Investors like it. Can you prove that? No, but they're smart people. And I think, like I said, this is primarily a financial transaction, and we're going to see how it plays out over time. But what an amazing transformation of Dell Technologies over the last 5 years. I mean, stunning. Never seen anything like it.
Yeah. Acquisition of EMC, the standardization of a portfolio that's supporting a modern infrastructure.
Well,
impressive.
Dell Technologies up almost 7% after hours. So Dell's up more than VMware. I think because people never really expected that Michael Dell was going to do this, and now they realize. So this stock has upside, in my opinion, Dell, because they're still at a negative value, right? So you could arbitrage. I think you're going to see people arbitraging that Dell move. But by the way, there's no guarantees. This could maybe not happen. Who knows? But
yeah.
there's still if this happens and Dell can clean up its balance sheet and force some of the debt onto VMware, Dell's got some upside, in my view. And then VMware has to execute, which it's good at.
Well, it's always fun to see action in a time where we need more action and less, crap floating around with the whole COVID politics and just kind of a really kind of sideways marketplace. The good news is I truly think that this is going to be a massive slingshot effect of innovation. I mean, we're already seeing, Dave, just on the virtual events that we're doing, the software that we're rolling out. And Jerry Chad said it. It's not. It's who's not the most fit to survive. It's who's most resilient. And the entrepreneurs and the companies that are resilient and they take action in these times are going to win. I think there's a huge opportunity, and the new expectations, the new infrastructure, and it's going to cause a highly accelerated rate. Satya Nadella said a few weeks ago, he said, 2 years of digital transformation happened in 2 months. So you had a post of a big wrecking ball hitting the digital transformation building. Well, guess what? It's here. So, there's going to be winners and losers really fast. Next 12 to 18 months, I think there's going to be a massive culling of the herd on the tech business. So there's no doubt in my mind, if I'm an investor or I'm an entrepreneur, it's going to be an opportunity to take advantage, take some territory, and take market share. So
yeah, and look, we've been reporting on the security space, which, I mean, you look at, and we called this in February. We named these companies 4-star companies. Of course, we didn't predict COVID. That was sort of luck, but Okta, CrowdStrike, Zscaler, Fortinet, Proofpoint. I mean, on and on and on. You look at the security companies, a lot of green.
Yeah.
And, the work from home is not a temporary thing.
Well, the tell signs are all there, right? I mean, the tell signs, the markers are all in line. You can see the markers and the tell signs, right? So one, shift to virtual everything. That's not virtualization like server virtualization. But if you think about server virtualization, what that did for the marketplace, it created Amazon. Without virtualization, Amazon never would have existed, probably, because they would have been too cheap to buy servers. So they virtualize it because they're smart, right? So you're going to see the virtualization. So that's a marker. But I think, to me, the true tell sign to squint through all the carnage and all the noise is talk versus action. If you look at everything, people, startups, companies, the people talking could get by in a marketplace that is not as robust, but with so much consequences, it's the action that's going to define the winners. If you want to know who's winning and losing, this is my filter. Who's taking action? Who's talking? The talking without action, and I can point to almost 5 examples. I won't say them now because I'll save it for another session. But if people are talking and not showing it, they're done because they don't have anything. This is like people are going to be on the wrong side of history, Dave, on this, right? So we're going to see this like play out. It's like a slow motion train wreck.
Well, Michael Dell's taking action. I mean,
he's got windfall, and he's got the windfall.
I mean, talk about bringing excitement to the enterprise. I mean, nobody's been more exciting or created more excitement in the enterprise than Michael Dell over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
It's been awesome. It's been really an honor and pleasure to watch that and cover that in the cube with you, John. It's been really tremendous.
He's got a spring in his step again. Remember that time we saw him, like, he's got a spring in his step, Dave. He's got something up his sleeve, you know. So he's been having a lot of fun. I got to tell you, he's made some great moves. He played the chessboard beautifully. And if he get through the knothole on this one, get the windfall, I mean, he took a ton of heat. Remember the heat he took on EMC?
Oh yeah.
He got crushed.
He had a fight. He had to fight Carl Icahn for his company. I mean, who beats the great Icahn, right? Well, Michael Dell does. You know, and he took on Elliott Management, and he had to pay a piper there. He had to pay a little bit more to go public. And look at don't get me wrong, Dell's got a great business. It throws off a lot of cash, and it's going to be fun to watch.
He's freaking our age. He's my age. We're in the same class.
The other thing too, John, is they clean up the balance sheet. They can start doing acquisitions again. And then, talk about visionaries. Michael Dell's a visionary. I mean, he sees the IoT opportunity. He sees the edge. He sees that as a real hedge against the cloud. And so maybe he's going to put big bets on the edge. I think, as David Flores reported, new architectures are going to emerge. The whole, Intel-based architectures are, they're going to be under fire from ARM. And, ARM may float again. You saw that news with SoftBank. So a lot of changes coming. A lot of changes.
I just wonder if monitor sales are up because I love my Alienware. I want the 49-inch Dell monster monitor, up 4K from the side, get a nice rig set up for the home studio. I mean,
I need your help. I need a better setup here. Give me some advice.
Yeah, get a big monitor and get a great camera. Dave, great chatting with you. Signing
John,
off.
thank you.
Good hot take. Thanks.